Evening all, been a while. As you can tell by the hat and the jacket, it's getting cold here in Scotland. It was 3 degrees the other night riding home from work, so it was a little bit nippy, and that's about the extent of the gloves that I've got. I have been looking at buying heated gloves, but apparently I have little tiny evil small indexed fingers that just don't fit heated gloves. All the heated gloves that I can find, I end up with like an extra kind of 2 inches of fingertip, which is no use to anybody, so the heated gloves isn't going to be it's a bit of a non-starter. Right, so for those of you that have never seen heated grips before, let's do the show and tell and the unboxing. Bride recommended. I've actually had these in a few bikes and they're great. I think until these guys came along, decent kind of branded heated grips were the only ones you could get really were the Oxford ones, and they were quite dear, they were about 80 quid or something like that. R&G have done these at about £35 for at least a decade now, and they're great. There's not much to them, they're fairly simple. You get a bag of bits that I've obviously just dropped, bag of fixtures and fittings, you even get some new wee bar ends if you need them, that kind of thing. We have the control unit. Now this control unit will just stick on, so I'm thinking of just sticking this onto the dash on the PCX, but you can mount it on one of your switch gear screws. There's a mount in the bag to do that as well, so that's there too. We have our main wiring harness, which I am going to need. I'm not even taking the tie wrap off this, I won't need that much on this because the cables are right behind the windscreen. And then we have our 2 grips. Now for those of you who have never done this before, obviously can't resist a bit of mansplaining, do you know what I mean? So look, you'll see the insides are different sizes. So we have one that's obviously larger inside, designed to go over our throttle tube, and one that's just not, to go over our bars. So stick with me, I'll take you through fitting them. First thing we need to do is get the screen and the front panels off. Here we go again, eh? That's about the 17th time this has been off. It was about now that I realised that my audio hadn't recorded, so what I'm saying here is this is where I thought the heated grips would plug into. On most Hondas you have an accessory circuit there, all DeVils, Panuros, etc, and you just plug straight into the bullet connectors and it works fine. Unfortunately on this PCX those are dead. I don't know what they're for. Maybe it's something that needs to be enabled in the ECU or you know, some other setting somewhere, I don't know. The bit we're looking for now is in this plug here, this multi-plug. Now it's actually connected to a blank holder, and what we're looking for is we're looking for the green wire for ground and the blue with white stripe for our switched ignition live. This is the socket that if you buy the official Honda grips that they plug into, and then the wiring all kind of sprouts wings out of there to go to the various controllers, etc. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pop that connector off, and we're going to snip 2 of the cables. First thing I'm going to do though, once I do it, is I'm going to check them with the old Fluke multimeter, just to make sure that it is actually the switch live and that I've no cut something stupid. And then once I've confirmed that that's what they are, we're going to use them to power our heated grips. Now one thing I might do in the future, because we've got this big kind of tray bit at the front of where this connector is, just where my hand is right now, I might get one of those multi-outlet power blocks and use it to power my phone charger socket as well, my USB socket on my quad lock. But for now I'm just going to do the heated grips, and I'm just breaking in here, just cutting back some of the kind of outer cable conduit just to free up the wire so I can get in to snip at them, and we can get them tested. Now the cables, I was initially going to try and just pop the connectors out the connector block, but because of the way they're put on there, I decided against it. I didn't want to mess up the connector block, so the way that I'm doing it is I'm snipping them, but I'm leaving enough cable so that I can you know, reconnect them to the original block if I want to at some point in the future. Now, just stripping the cables at this point, just stripping a wee tiny bit off each one, we're not going mad. I've stripped about maybe half a centimetre exposed cable in there. I'm just going to put the fluke on it and then we'll try switching it on and see how it goes. Snip, snip. Right, so nothing fantastic here but me snipping some cables, is what it is. Once I've done that, strip a wee bit of the external wiring away from. Always worth investing in the tool. Wire stripper was 12 quid or something like that, and it's proved it's worth a million times. It takes 2 seconds to do a really neat job, and you can set everything to be exactly the same. There's no danger of damaging the cable either when you're doing that. So here comes the fluke. So I know that I've got loads of money to buy posh multimeters, by the way. This was inherited from my old man. He was an electrician. So all I'm checking here is I've got my red probe to my blue cable with white stripe for my switch live, and my black one to my green for earth. Totally dead there, no voltage whatsoever. At this point in time, I'm then realising how sensitive, I keep forgetting how sensitive the keyless is on this. The key's literally on my workbench, about 4 feet away, and it won't register. So got the remote, brought it back over. There we go, switch it on. I'm just going to test this to make sure it's live now with the ignition. And bingo, if memory serves, I got 12.3 volts. So we can continue with what we're going to do here. Let's get these heated grips fitted and get them onto this. Here is I've run the cabling for the controller just down through the yoke, the gap in the yoke really, where the throttle cables and all the other cables go through as well. And that's sat in there giving me the connections for both the controllers. So the heated grips themselves just connect onto these white connectors down the bottom, and then the main power connection goes into the controller unit as well. The grips themselves, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just plug everything in and test it just now and just make sure the grips warm up. I like, if I'm fitting heated grips, I like to warm them up to start with because it makes them a bit more flexible as well. Supples them up, you know, softens them up a wee bit and makes them a wee bit easier to install. So all I'm doing here is basically just running the cables for the grips down through that gap as well. Just going to hook everything up and test it, make sure it's all working, let them warm up a bit and soften up a wee bit. So the connectors I'm going to use here for this, I'm not breaking out the solder, well I'm breaking out the solder now, but not to strip my solder bare wires. I'm going to use these little heat shrink connectors. They've got a little bit of solder in them and the heat's good heat shrink with the glue. So what you do is you put one end of each, you bit of cable in each end and then you heat all round about it. Heat shrinks, then grabs it, the glue grips it, and eventually the solder melts as well and completes the connection. It gives you a really nice, secure, waterproof connection, nice and neat and tidy, dead simple. I'm using a wee butane soldering iron with the tip removed, just so that I can heat all round about it nice and evenly. You can also just use one of those windproof flameless lighters. I've used them before with it as well. You just need to be careful when you're heating it up that you don't overcook the middle bit for the solder and burn the insulation away and, desperately try to get the solder to flow. So dead simple to use, just pop them together and then heat all round about them, as you'll see here in 2 seconds. And you can't dig me for this, because I got the idea for these. I saw a video of Big Clive done with them, and he's the man with electrics, so there, meh. problem solved. And they're dead handy and they're quite cheap. I think that was about £10 for that big giant box. Just make sure you use the right size. So just here, physically connecting the cables all together, so the main loom clipping into the controller like that. It's pretty simple really. The main loom's a different size connector to the two heated grips themselves. The heated grips themselves are both identical connections, so you can't really cock it up. It's pretty straightforward. Once I've done this, all I'm going to do is power on the ignition and test that it's all working. Just make sure that everything's still working and that I've no screwed anything up. And that's the way I like to do these things. Is just test them at every stage and just make sure that it's still working. I've tucked some of the wiring away up there. I'm going to tuck all the wiring up there out the way. The way these RNG grips work, what you're supposed to do is crank them up to full power to start with for a wee while. Once they've warmed up a bit, you crack them down to 1 or 2. I've never gone above 2, even on an hour-and-a-half long motorway commute in quite cold weather. Any warmer than 2 I've found really to be quite uncomfortable on my hands. So now comes fitting the actual grips themselves. So what we need to do is remove the original grips and start the ball rolling for there. So when it comes time to remove the original grips, I mean these have only done 500-600 mile, always handy to have spare grips lying around. 2 different methods you could use. You could use the airline, which I've tried here. There's too much glue in the grip underneath, so the airline's just no doing it. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use the long thin screwdriver, work my way around the inside of the grip to break the glue up. I'm going to give it a little squirt of XCP1 as well, just for a wee bit of lube, and it will pop right off. Then I'm going to repeat the process on the other side, bearing in mind that there may be some little kind of throttle tube grips and stuff on the other side. I'll show you in a sec. So here we go, we've got the throttle grip here. Now these wee ridges here help to hold the grip on for Honda, so you need to get your screwdriver just in and just pop them over the edge of the ridges. Then I've just done the usual again, I've gave it a wee squirt of the XCP and it's come right off. You'll see there's ridges down at this side as well, and there's like grip spots all over the throttle tube. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself look like the abominable snowman with my Dremel and create a lot of white dust and grind all them away so it's nice and smooth and the heated grip will fit. Now off camera what I've done is I've ground all that down. I now look like I've been in a nightclub in Glasgow on a Saturday night with all the white stuff all over me. I've wiped down the throttle tube with a wee bit of brake cleaner just to clean off all any of the lube that was left on there, and I'm now lining up my heated grip. Now you'll see the cable coming out the heated grip. What you need to be careful what you do with this is that you don't position it so it blocks your brake lever. So what I try to do is roll it down a bit so I can almost use my so when I'm on the throttle it's at like where my thumb is naturally, and I can use my thumb even to push that to use as the throttle, you know, and I find that keeps it out of the way. Obviously with the other side what we need to do is make sure on the scooter that it's not going to get in the way of our back brake lever, so we're just going to position it kind of point down the way, checking that the lever moves all the way back at the same time. Now it was about this point where I realised I'd ground off too much of the throttle tube, which isn't really that big a problem. Throttle tube's no expensive, about 8-9 quid, but I've enough left on it that what I've had to do when I put the grip on is I've had to use quite a bit of super glue, but that's fine. What you need to remember is that if your grip rotates, and it keeps rotating when you're on the throttle, if it twists on the throttle grip, that's an MOT fail. Same goes for the left hand grip, it should be solid. Little bit of super glue save you here, or grip glue as they call it, and you'll notice that the edge of these heated grips is a bit long as well, so normally the kind of outside inch or so doesn't heat up so that you can cut it to fit, and that's what I've got to do as well. I've got to cut it to fit so I can get my bar end weight back on. And I know I've been cutting with the blade towards myself and all that, but hey, to hell with it, this isn't a health and safety video. I survived, end of story. So I'm just tidying up the wiring a wee bit here, cable tying the heated grip cables to existing cables and stuff like that. It's probably all going to be hidden with muffs anyway, because I'm going to surrender the rest of my dignity for the sake of warm hands. But just tidying things up a wee bit. You can see at the front I've tidied up, of the wiring's kind of pushed up underneath that cowl. Fitting the left grip is exactly the same as fitting the right grip. Just slide it on with a bit of glue and make sure it doesn't get in the way of the brake lever. No problem there. What we're going to do is, everything's been warming up at this point. Everything's great. I've tested it all. It's working brilliant. I am just going to, after I do this, I'm going to adjust my thermal screw a wee bit, because the apron's got some big gaps in it. It's not fitting quite right. I think I've over tightened some straps and not tightened others enough. So time to get the thing bolted back together and test them and see what they look like with the bar ends on. Not the neatest bit of cutting either, by the way. There's, you know, probably a lot of people will cut it a lot neater. I don't really give a shit. End of story. I'm quite happy with them the way they are. It doesn't bother me how they look. This is a workhorse. I don't really care about cosmetics on it. Need to think about where we're going to put the controller now. I've had a wee look. I was thinking about putting it on the dashboard in a few places, but I've decided just to use the bar clamp on it. So there's a little rubber strap you get, and a little clamp and a couple of screws will clamp round about it, and then I'm going to use the 3M sticky pad that comes with it to stick the heated grip controller on top of that. And there we go, I've done it. I've just put it up there at a left hand, so it's easy adjusted. You don't need, obviously you want your left hand so you don't need to take your hand off the throttle. The controls that there. Starting to look a wee bit crowded on here with the quad lock and all that, but hey ho. Everything's fitted, everything works great. Jamming, job's a good one. Makes a nice change. And there we go, ladies and gents, the Finnick article put back together. The Monster's back to sleep. Monster's up next, I think. Exhausts and indicators. We'll make it kind of more legalish, make it safer to ride that way, and we'll make it sound more like a Monster. They've readjusted the thermal screw a wee bit. I think I had one strap tightened too much the wrong way kind of thing, so it's just going to take a bit of fettling. I'll let you get a wee switch there at the heaters. So that's how the controls and that all look, so nice and easy to use with your left thumb, you're there. Alright, catch you next time, see you later.